Hello and welcome to today's Wednesday live session. I'm talking today about how to silence your inner critic because this is something that comes up for my clients all the time. And I think it's something that we are all guilty of in some way or another. Now, please don't forget to hit the like button and please do comment along whether you're watching live or on replay. I really do like to see your comments, so please do comment along and I will respond to you whether I'm doing it in real time or later. So thinking about that inner critic, like I say, we've all got it. Everybody does it. Some people unfortunately do it more than others. And like I said, this is something that comes up for my clients, regularly. And we first of all need to kind of work out where that voice comes from, because most of the time it feels like it's really unhelpful. We can be just criticising ourselves over the most silly or mundane things. And part of that, like I say, part of that I think is quite normal. Part of that is maybe about holding ourselves accountable, making sure that we're doing the things that we need to be doing, which I know is keeping yourself accountable. And it's probably for most people, it comes in cycles where if we're feeling low about ourselves, we will be more critical about ourselves and then less so at other times. But for some people, that inner critic is there too much. It's there all the time. And it's really helpful to understand why we have that inner critic and actually where that voice comes from. I talk a lot about this in my Thrive course. I talk about it in my one-to-one work, but I also talk about it in my Thrive DIY course where we run through this in various modules, because I believe that almost all of us are such a huge product of our own childhood. So not that our childhood is 100% the reason for why we are who we are, but it's a huge part of it. And the reason why I focus very much on this, apart from the fact that this is my therapist training, if you like, looking at how our early years help us to form our personality and our characteristics, but also because it sets us on a trajectory, and it influences all of our experiences and the decisions that we have ever made and we are going to make. So understanding our past is a vital part of understanding not just who we are, but why we are. And that inner critic is a very big part of that, because that inner critic comes from our caregivers, the people who were looking after us and the people who we looked up to as we were growing up. And so if you were raised with very critical parents or critical caregivers, that then becomes part of your own internal narrative. That then becomes part of your own story. And so as you are going through life and you are experiencing life, that is the voice that always comes back to you, right? So in one of the modules, I always say, like, whose voice is it that you are hearing? Is it your voice, or is it your mother's voice, or your father, or your grandparents, or a school teacher? Like, it's really good to know where that voice is coming from. And often if it is our caregivers, which, for the majority of people is going to be your parents, understanding what was going on at that time can be quite helpful. So not necessarily, knowing everything about what was going on, but understanding that criticism or that negative, I don't want to say like negative encouragement, because it's not encouragement, right? But it's those high standards that they passed on to you, likely started from them. It's the standards that they are holding for themselves as well. And you see these patterns playing out time and time again through the generations. It's absolutely fascinating as an observer to be able to cast it back. And you can often cast it back, not always, but you can often cast it back through the generations, especially if you're, like our parents were from a very different generation and their parents were obviously from a very, very different generation. So we can see how these things pass along. But it's important to be able to catch that voice when it comes up, because sometimes it can be there to be quite helpful. Your inner critic, unfortunately, is likely to be very harsh and quite rude as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's not there for some good reason, because sometimes it's there actually to protect you. Sometimes it's there because it's going into overdrive, into wanting to help you to either achieve something or do something, or it's trying to prevent you from putting yourself into a position where you might be vulnerable, right? So when I first started doing live videos like this, I would be absolutely riddled with anxiety about whether what I was saying was right, whether somebody would be disagreeing with what I was saying. And so the instinct, if you like, is to not do it. But that's ridiculous. Why would I not want to share my knowledge and my thinking with people who are interested in hearing it? Okay, so but the instinct is to stop out of self-protection. Now, that might apply, you might resonate with that, or there might be times where that inner critic is just harsh for absolutely no reason. And there it's really helpful to actually think, well, what is it? So if you can catch yourself in that moment, what is it that my inner critic is trying to tell me? What does it want me to stop doing? What is it trying to achieve? So I've got a couple of things that I just want to just run through with you that I think might be helpful on what we can do to appease that inner critic. Because like I say, sometimes it's there for good reasons, sometimes it's not. If you are, so I'm just going to think about, something that's just relevant for me for the weekend. I ate really badly over the weekend and ate lots of snacks and high sugar stuff that I wouldn't normally eat. Now, I can, in that kind of instance, and most people will relate to this, I can, in that instance, then start criticising myself and being really harsh on myself. Is that helpful? No, it's not really that helpful. But is it there for good reason? Yeah, it could be there for good reason, because I ate an absolute shed load of rubbish that I don't normally eat because I choose not to eat it. So do I then accept the fact that I'm fat, greedy and whatever else? No, I don't. Okay, so I could, and in the past maybe I would have done, but I don't have to now, because actually the flip side, which is what I want you to think about, is that there's also something about self-compassion, and actually nobody does everything great all of the time, and we all fall off the wagon at some point. So am I going to be really hard on myself because I had a day or 2 days eating crisps and biscuits? I'm not going to lie awake at night worrying about it too much. I just make sure that I correct myself for the week going forward. Okay, but maybe if there is a promotion that you want to go for, or an opportunity that you got overlooked for, then your inner critic might be trying to tell you that you were never good enough for it, or that you were above your station even thinking about it in the first place. And whilst that isn't helpful, and whilst that isn't horrible, you can catch that at that moment and use that as an opportunity to actually rewrite that script. You didn't get that promotion this time around, but there are things that you can do now to make sure that you're in a better position to do it next time. Or you were overlooked for something and maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe something better is waiting for you, or maybe the circumstances around that weren't quite right. So this isn't to fluff it up, right, and to make it sound unimportant. But sometimes we can just tell the inner critic it's wrong. Okay, and that's I'll come on to that in a minute. That's really helpful. But sometimes we can actually understand what was the purpose of that narrative, what was the purpose of that inner talk, and what do I need to learn from that or take from that. Sometimes it's about remembering actually where that comes from. So if you've got, I can't think of an example, but if you've got an example where you are triggered, right? Something is triggering you and is taking you back to something. Try and have a think about where that stems from. Like I said at the beginning, I'm all about understanding our past. I'm all about understanding our inner child. So what does your inner child need to hear? What does your inner child need to understand in that moment? Because that's going to be really insightful for you to be able to acknowledge and rewrite, heal, change. You know, when I think about going back to inner child work, I love inner child work, by the way. I really find it incredibly insightful for understanding how we get triggered. And I said right at the top that you may find that you are more critical at certain times than at other times. So if you are in a period of low, you will likely be more critical of yourself than you would be if you are on a high, right? Or if you're in a good place. And that kind of makes sense, right? I don't think I need to elaborate on that too much. So thinking back to your childhood, thinking back to a time where you were criticised, think back to who it was that was doing that criticising. What do you need to tell that child? What do you need to remind yourself of? What do you need to do to make yourself feel better in that instance? Because that's something that you're carrying forward now. And I'm pretty certain you don't need to be carrying that forward. So what do you need to hear? Because I bet, like, the overwhelming majority of us are doing really well, right? You're watching this now. I am pretty confident. I don't know who's watching this, obviously, but I'm pretty confident you're doing pretty good at life, okay? So just because you are having a moment of doubting yourself or even castigating yourself, that doesn't mean that it's real. So think about all of the things that you do right. Think about all of the things that you do really well. Think of all of it. Again, this is another one of the exercises that I do in my course. Think about everything that you've achieved that you can feel really proud of. And then when you get that moment of criticism, you can silence it. You can silence it. You don't have to take it on board. You don't have to believe it. Just because it's coming from you, it doesn't mean that it's right. In fact, it's not coming from you. It's coming from somebody else. It's either coming from your early years experiences within your family unit or network, or it's coming from society. It's coming from social media. It's coming from other people in your workplace. It's coming from other people in your network. It's coming from what people expect you should be doing. But nobody's doing the things that they are criticising you for. Nobody's acing life 100%. Nobody is walking through life without any wounds or bruises. It's just not true. It's just simply not true. I can tell you that from years and years of experience. So catch it, tend to it, understand where it's coming from, understand who it is coming from, and understand whether or not it serves you, whether it delivers you what you need to know, or how you can best take that lesson and turn that into something that is helpful for you moving forwards. I hope that's been helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts and comments. So please do let me know. And if you would like to know any more information about working with me one-to-one, please drop me a message and we can book in a free no pressure call and have a chat. Have a lovely rest of the day. Speak to you soon. Bye.